Welcome to the Dr. Gerry Fishkin Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gerry Fishkin. Today's episode is about something almost everybody has encountered, but very few people recognize in themselves. I call it the victim mentality syndrome. It's not genuine victimization, no, not trauma, not abuse, not tragedy. Those are real. Those deserve compassion, healing, justice, understanding, and all the rest. What we're talking about is something very different. We're talking about the mindset that says, it's always somebody else's fault. The world is against me. I have no power. No matter what I do, nothing changes. Everyone else ruined my life. And the dangerous thing about victim mentality is this. It feels comforting in the short term, while quietly destroying your life from the inside in the long term. In today's episode, I'm going to expose victim mentality, help you functionally understand it, and most importantly, I want you to learn how to escape it if you're plagued by it in your own life. Because the moment a human being gives away responsibility, and you have to listen to this, they give away their power, and as a result, suffer a loss of agency. And once you believe you're powerless, your life starts happening to you instead of through you. I'd like to give you some everyday examples everyone recognizes. Let's begin with some examples almost everybody has seen at least once. Example number one, the employee who is never, ever the problem. You know this person. They've had 7 jobs in 10 years. Every boss was toxic. Every company was corrupt. Every coworker was jealous. Nothing is ever their responsibility. Now, certainly some bosses are difficult and some workplaces are really unhealthy. But when every single experience becomes proof that the world is unfair, the common denominator may not be the world. It may be them. Example number 2. The perpetually unhappy relationship partner. They say, all men are selfish. All women are manipulative. Nobody appreciates me. Yet they continually choose the same destructive relationships over and over again. Why? Because victim mentality often prevents self-examination. It's psychologically safer to blame the world than to ask, what am I doing to play a role in this pattern? That question, folks, is painful, but it's also the beginning of freedom. Example number 3, the chronic complainer. Every conversation becomes the economy. My parents, my ex, the government, my childhood, my luck, Trump. They complain constantly yet take no meaningful action. And eventually, something tragic happens. Yeah, their complaining becomes their entire identity. They no longer want solutions. They want validation from others, either openly or tacitly, for staying stuck. Example number 4, the social media victim Olympics. Now, modern culture has created something extraordinary, and we all see it. A competition over who is the most oppressed. Look at the media. Some people now build their entire identities around grievance. If they fail, it's society. If they're criticized, it's persecution. If someone disagrees with them, it's abuse. Victimhood has become social currency. And here's the frightening part. Victimhood often receives attention, sympathy, validation, and protection, which means psychologically, yes, it can become very rewarding. Like giving drugs to an addict, the chronic complainer gets dopamine hits every time someone listens to their litany of upsets. Example number 5, the person who rejects every solution. Have you ever tried helping someone who shoots down every idea? You say, maybe try therapy. Nah, that won't work. Maybe exercise would help. No, I already tried that. What about changing jobs? No, impossible. Every solution is rejected. Why? Because solving the problem would require responsibility. And responsibility feels terrifying to someone deeply attached to victimhood. So, what is victim mentality actually? Victim mentality is not simply suffering. Everyone suffers. Victim mentality is the belief that I have no meaningful power over my life. Remember, I talked about loss of agency. People with victim mentality constantly blame others or situations for the events in their lives. And this becomes psychologically seductive because it removes accountability. So we have responsibility and accountability gone. So if nothing is your fault, you never have to change. But there's a terrible price. You also never grow. You stay stuck, and life becomes nothing more than a perceived series of insults to be avoided at all cost. So the question is, how do people develop victim mentality? So let's be compassionate here. Folks, people are not born this way. Victim mentality is learned, sometimes from trauma, sometimes from family systems, sometimes from chronic criticism, and especially growing up, and sometimes from environments where helplessness becomes survival. Victimhood can evolve as a defense mechanism after adverse life events, and this is extremely important. Many people with victim mentality were genuinely hurt at some point, at some time in their life. But somewhere along the way, pain became identity. And once pain becomes identity, healing feels threatening. Because if you heal, who are you then? So there are hidden rewards from being a victim. And now we enter really controversial territory. Victim mentality often has unconscious or pre-verbal rewards. In psychology, we call this secondary gain. In other words, victimhood can provide sympathy, attention, validation, financial assistance, or emotional protection. This doesn't mean people are faking. Most are not consciously aware that they're manipulating others, but the human brain notices rewards. If helplessness repeatedly brings comfort, rescue, or attention, the brain learns to stay helpless. This is why some people remain emotionally trapped for decades, not because they enjoy suffering, no, but because suffering has become psychologically familiar and rewarding. So what does victim mentality look like in modern culture? We are now living in a culture that rewards emotional fragility. Resilience is something viewed as being harsh. Personal responsibility is viewed as blame. And accountability is viewed as oppression. And the result? Many people now believe discomfort itself is injustice. But life includes discomfort. Growth includes discomfort. Responsibility includes discomfort. Freedom includes discomfort. And if you eliminate all discomfort from life, you eliminate growth itself. And there is a difference between being a victim and living as one, and this is critical. A person can genuinely be victimized without adopting a victim mentality, and that distinction matters enormously. A woman assaulted as a child is a victim of abuse. A veteran in war, and I see a lot of them in my practice, is a victim of tragedy. A man betrayed financially may be a victim of fraud. These are realities. But the question becomes, what happens next? Do you remain psychologically imprisoned forever? Or do you reclaim agency? Because healing begins the moment someone says, "This happened to me, but it does not define the entirety of who I am." And that sentence, folks, changes everything. It changes lives. So let me tell you why responsibility is so powerful. And here's one of the great paradoxes of psychology. Responsibility feels heavy at first, but ultimately creates freedom. Victimhood feels comforting at first, but ultimately creates imprisonment. Responsibility says, I may not control everything that happens to me, but I can control my response or my attitude to it. And that is where human dignity lives, not in perfect circumstances, but in personal agency. Viktor Frankl understood this profoundly. In a concentration camp, one of the worst environments imaginable, Frankl realized something revolutionary. Everything can be taken away from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose one's responsibility. And that insight may be one of the most psychologically important truths ever discovered. And I know that too because I was Viktor Frankl's graduate assistant in my doctoral program, and we talked about these issues extensively. So there are signs that you may have a victim mentality. So let's make this personal. Do you constantly blame others? Do you repeatedly feel life is unfair specifically to you? Do you reject constructive feedback or criticism? Do you complain more than you act? Do you secretly enjoy sympathy? Do you feel powerless to change patterns in your life? These are warning signs. And let me say something difficult. Self-pity can become emotionally addictive, just like a drug, because it temporarily relieves responsibility. But temporary relief often creates permanent suffering. So how do we escape victim mentality? First, stop waiting to feel motivated. Action comes before motivation, not after. Most people wait until they feel ready. That day rarely comes. I like the principle, ready, aim, fire, or act as if. Number two, take radical ownership. If something was not your fault, your recovery is still your responsibility. That sentence changes lives. Number three, stop building identity around pain. Your trauma may explain you, but it cannot become your permanent definition. Otherwise, the wound becomes your personality and a major component of your identity. And you have to say, at the end of the day, do you really want that? Number four, learn self-love. And this is where today's topic intersects deeply with another issue I discuss often and recently did a podcast about, and that is the loss of self and the absence of self-love. Please check it out on my YouTube channel when you have a moment. Many people with victim mentality believe they are weak, they are broken, and they are helpless. Self-love restores dignity, not narcissism, not grandiosity. Self-respect, self-worth, and self-compassion are what grow. Self-care and self-love are also critical parts of any recovery program because healing requires the belief that you are worth saving. And let me say that again. Healing requires the belief that you're worth it, that you're worth saving. You must believe that. Number five, accept the fact that life is sometimes unfair. And I think the word fair is best used in a 8th grade class than in life, okay? Because fairness doesn't live in life. But accept the fact that sometimes life is unfair. This may sound harsh, but it's actually liberating. Life is not perfectly fair. Never was. And once you stop demanding perfect fairness from reality, you can finally begin adapting to reality. And that adaptation is power. Victim mentality is one of the great silent destroyers of human potential and dignity. It destroys ambition. It destroys resilience. It destroys relationships. It destroys self-respect. And most tragically, it destroys hope. Because when a person believes they have no power, they stop trying. But today, I want you to remember something very important. You are not powerless. You may be wounded. You may be grieving. And you may be exhausted. You may have been betrayed. But your life is not over. And somewhere inside you is still the ability to choose, to act, to rebuild, to recover, to heal, and to rise. The goal is not to become invulnerable. The goal is to stop surrendering your power and your agency. Because the moment you reclaim responsibility, you reclaim your life. And today, perhaps more than ever, remember this. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can absolutely control your attitude about it, and especially what happens next. This is not self-help. This is self-respect. If today's message spoke to you, email me your breakthroughs at drjerry@drjerryfishkin.com. I might just read them on air, and yes, I'll send you one of my beautiful Dr. Gerry Fishkin Show mugs. You can follow me on social media, and especially at my new YouTube channel, Gerry Fishkin. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your family, friends, or anyone you know, really, who won't hate you or be offended by the subject. Make sure that you tell them that they don't have a victim mentality, okay? I'd love to hear your stories. And by the way, if you really want a good laugh and learn something new about people, and maybe yourself, please visit my podcast on the Trump derangement syndrome. It's getting a lot of views, a lot of clicks, and it's really stimulating a lot of folks, plus and minus. I guarantee if you don't get a chuckle, I'll return the cost of admission. So until next time, I'm Dr. Gerry Fishkin, wishing that you always remember to keep searching, keep growing, and keep saying yes to your life, because it's all that we have. See you next time.